I went there, shot a single frame. Absolute banger, I'm going to be honest. Hey guys, Feral here. This is an update on my Leica Q video. So I've been using this for almost 3 months now, and when I got the camera, obviously, I did quite a lot of research on it. And one of the weird things that I found is I found a Leica Q Copenhagen brochure. I'll pop some images of the PDF on here. So following that discovery, me and my wife decided to make a trip to Copenhagen, A, to enjoy a little festive break, and B, to put the Leica back in that environment just so I could have a little bit of fun with photography. I've been using this camera as a daily carry since I picked it up, and I've not looked back. Let's get into it. So I did rewatch my first impressions review before actually shooting this, and I've got to say, most of those points still stand true. It's a good looking camera, it handles very, very well, the autofocus is plenty snappy enough, and I do like that the menus get out of your way so you can just focus on making a nice image. Now, the majority of the time I do find myself using a lot of the automated features on this camera, so I do generally use auto ISO unless I feel the situation benefits from a set ISO. This is something most people should be doing anyway. I do generally pick what aperture I want, although I will let the camera ride on aperture auto sometimes just to see what it comes out with. And I'm going to be honest, most of the time it gets it spot on. You've got a 1.7 lens, most of the time you want to be using it at 1.7. And regarding shutter speed, I'll generally use auto unless I'm trying to capture motion in my image. But for the majority of the time, as long as it's over 1/60th of a second, which is more than twice the focal length, I'm going to get a nice sharp image anyway. And with the optical stabilization built into the lens, I'm finding it's very good at getting what I need. But when it comes to low light, this thing is no slouch. Have I enjoyed using it as an everyday carry? Absolutely. It's been phenomenal. Now, one thing that I have noticed that is quite entertaining to me is my wife has picked this camera up more than any other camera I've ever had. She's often picking this camera up to get pictures of the cats when they're doing something silly, or she might pick it up to get pictures of me when we're on adventures or doing an activity or something. And it's really nice to see that this is not an intimidating camera to her. And now she's opting to pick this camera up more than she does even the Fuji. And she loved the Fuji cameras. It's just very interesting to see that this is the camera that she's going for out of all the ones that we've got. However,
it's mine. My precious.
I've had numerous compliments on how this camera looks. When I was actually in Copenhagen for the first day, a lovely old chap came up to me and was like, "Yeah, that's a nice camera, buddy." That's not how he sounded, but it is today. And it was perfect for just, documentary travel photography. Now, I wasn't trying to do my typical, I'm a photographer, look at me go. I was just capturing moments and not really going out of my way to get images that I want. And because of that, it didn't impact the holiday and I just had a great time. There was an image in the brochure that showed the Copenhagen Plaza Hotel, and I really liked that sign, and I thought, I could probably get something of that. I went there, shot a single frame. Absolute banger, I'm going to be honest. Would it have worked better if the cyclist had a high contrast coat? Would it have worked better in daylight? Maybe, but for a one frame shot and done, move on. This, I am 10 out of 10 happy with. Touching back on the 3D pop of the lens, it's absolutely there. Is it as much as my RX1R? I'm not sure yet. In some cases it feels like it, but that RX1R was a 3D pop machine. But I am not disappointed with this lens. It's tack sharp. There is a hell of a lot of 3D pop to the images. The rendering is beautiful. The fall off in the out of focus areas is stunning. And the colors from this camera are amazing. It's really interesting because this camera, I could go without editing the images and I would be perfectly happy. The colors that come out of it are really freaking nice. Now for handling, I have made myself a short strap for it, just so that I can have it around my neck, wrap it around my hand. And I am finding that I'm quite enjoying using the Match Technical thumb grip on it. I do still have the full Leica grip for it, but as I mentioned in my last video, that's something that I will save for when I'm shooting at events, so that it feels similar in the hand to the other camera that I'll be using alongside it, which at the moment is actually A Lumix S5 review coming soon. Stay subscribed for that. There's reasons for that purchase, even though I've got the XT4. But again, I'll update you on that journey a little further down the line. As mentioned in my last review, there are some concerns about the battery life. I used less than one battery a day. I took all my batteries with me. I think I've got 3 or maybe 4 batteries that came with this. I didn't buy them separately. They came with the camera, and I didn't use them. I used 1 battery per day and it was absolutely fine. I got all the images I want. I didn't feel like I was being held back. So the battery life is just not a concern with this camera. Obviously, there is a concern that there is a single card slot. Now, I always back up my images at the end of the day. And yes, there is always a risk of getting a card failure, but I didn't have any issues and I'd be quite happy continuing to shoot this as I do it. It's very likely going to be the sole camera that I decide to take with me to America next year. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what I can produce with it. Touching back on the lens for a second, obviously this is a 28mm Summilux f1.7. It's not 28mm. It's not. I had a comment, someone saying that, oh, there's not going to be that much difference between the 28 on this and the 35 on the Sony. Buddy, you're wrong. It's much wider, and I've seen multiple people comparing it and noticing that it performs more like a 26mm, and it absolutely does. It is much, much, much wider than a 35mm field of view, and it definitely doesn't feel like a true 28. Do I care? Not really. I'm using it as a travel camera and as an EDC camera, so actually capturing a wider scene makes my life a little bit easier, to be honest. I don't have to take a step back for an image. On that note, I have been cropping in on it a lot and it does retain a good amount of detail. This is the sweet spot for me between those 20 and 30 megapixel cameras. That's pretty spot on. I know obviously the Q2 has like a 48 megapixel and I think the Q3 has a 60 megapixel. I might be a little bit wrong on those specs, but this is absolutely the sweet spot for me, so I'm getting more than usable images and I'm punching in a lot on them. Autofocus has been great. Again, I do use single point, not continuous. You're not going to get away with continuous autofocus on this camera, but the single point is extremely snappy and sharp, and to my surprise, the face detection is actually really quite reliable. Now, again, as I have mentioned, I love that this has a manual focus clutch built in, so I do use that all the bloody time, because I absolutely love using it, and it's just a pleasure to touch and hold and press all the dials and buttons. And the tactility of this camera is making it one of my favorite cameras I've ever owned. I've owned a lot of cameras, so yeah, pretty good. Copenhagen was amazing, absolutely beautiful, shiny lights everywhere. We went to the Trevally Gardens and that was fantastic. One of the best Christmassy experiences I've ever had in my life, if not the best. Would 10 out of 10 recommend, and especially if you've got kids, I think you'd have an absolute blast there. And Copenhagen in general is just absolutely beautiful. I even got to eat some reindeer. 10 out of 10. So yeah, this is just a roughly 3-month update on my ownership of the Leica Q, and so far I am blown away. I know there is no such thing as the perfect camera. This is close, man. This is real flipping close. I love this thing, and it's getting a lot of use. It's performing as I want, and it's making me enjoy photography again. I can't ask for any more than that. Alright, I'll drop a proper review when I've had more time with it. This is just an updated feelings, updated impressions, and a showcase of some of the images I took from Copenhagen. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments, throw them down below. I'd love to chat with you, especially anything Leica, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.